Hey, so it's been a while since I've made a high performance compute video, and today I just wanted to show you how easy it is to perform some intense Blender rendering using cloud compute thanks to Lambda GPU Cloud. I don't want to waste any time, so let's just jump right into it. Just a little prerequisite, the only things that you're going to need for this actually, a web browser, and you need access to two commands, that's going to be SSH and SCP. Now this is going to be on any Linux distribution, basically any Mac OS version that they have, and even Windows has access to it with WSL and a slew of other tools that I'm aware of. Basically any device should be able to do this. Heck, I actually did it from an Android device not too long ago just for the fun of it. So let me show you what I've got here, right? If I run ls, I'm just in a directory with this little penguin2.blend file. And if you don't have a .blend file already, this isn't a Blender tutorial. I'm not going to teach how to actually make a little animation or anything, but I'm assuming if you made it here, you've already got something to do. So I've got this file, and oh, look at that slush of a cycle render preview. It's a pretty unremarkable penguin that's animating himself. Maybe if I enter object mode, his arms do a little thing, right? It's short, but even on my CPU, right, which has 32 threads, this is going to take me a couple hours to render due to all the fur and particles that I actually have on this effect. Instead of, as much as I really want to set up GPU racks in my apartment here, there's probably a better option to use cloud compute. Now, you actually have a ton of options these days when it comes to cloud compute, but when it comes to just needing GPU resources, absolutely nothing has come close in my research to Lambda Labs pricing. And hopefully I'll make that a little bit obvious as I go through. But there are some other instances that you could use, right? Obviously AWS, OCI, Google Cloud. There's a couple big ones, but if you just need this GPU power right away, nothing comes close to Lambda Labs pricing. If we come over here, right, you make your way to the dashboard here, right? This is Lambda Labs instances. You're going to want to make an account, and that's pretty straightforward. I won't walk you through that. You do register with a credit card, and I think they do like a slight, I think it was like a $10 test charge or something like that. I did that, nothing weird happened or anything. I'm going to go over here, right? Right now all I have is this penguin2.blend. I'm going to go click on the launch instance icon on the instances tab. And what's interesting, if you're familiar with other clouds, is kind of like spot instances as far as I'm aware, where it's just kind of you see what's available for you to use right now. And actually it looks like there's a lot of demand right now, but they just give a notification out that they've got some new capacity, and I'm pretty sure that's what we're seeing here with these single A100 instances. So these A100s, these are seriously beefy, boatload of VRAM and some other goodies, I'm sure. Even just one of them is going to be fantastic to render on. I think that's what I'm going to be doing today. $1.10 per hour. And I'm not going to really throw the other cloud providers under the bus, but nothing comes close to this, right, with GPU compute. I think I was matching dollar for dollar with one of the other big providers, I won't say who, and they gave me essentially a T4 GPU, which is, I mean, fine, but it's just nowhere close to this. And in terms of the system that's running that thing, we got 30 vCPUs, 200 gigs of RAM, and a boatload of temporary storage that we have to play around and learn with. I'm aware that Lambda actually does have some persistent storage instances that they're kind of doing beta testing on or starting out, but we're not going to be diving into that too much today. So if I click launch instance here, right, let's go with this, and it's going to show you the availability of these regions. I'm going to click on Texas because that's what's available right now, and that's pretty close to me. That's not going to be too bad. And also, I'm not really caring about latency at this point. Remember, I'm not hosting a web service or anything like that. Really, I just want to dump my file on there. I want it to compute and crunch the numbers on this thing and get it done and then pass it back to me. So I'm not going to attach a file system to this, right? I'm sure that the 512 gigs of solid state storage that it gave me, I believe it was, is going to be more than enough for what we're going to do here. So I'm going to do this, and here's a really cool thing that Lambda does, and you can actually do this on the side too here. You can provide your own SSH keys, which is really convenient. I'm sure a lot of you are going to want to do this. I just need an instance just to crunch some numbers. As I said, I'm going to let them manage the keys for me, so I'm going to say generate a new SSH key, and you're going to give it a name. This isn't too important besides, oh, remember what SSH keys go to what. I'm just going to call it Mike's key, just so it's obvious. So I've created the key, and it should launch the download for you. Incredibly small, like 1.6 kilobyte file. This will probably end up in your downloads directory, so just be aware of that. Move it to wherever you want to go. So I'm going to move it to this directory. Okay, so I did that there, and just in case anybody wants to follow along with the command line, the command is mv, wherever the location of that key is, to, you can just say dot, right, for wherever you are, right? I have a little Lambda Cloud directory just to keep things nice and organized. If I do an ls, I've got my blend file, and I've got mikeskey.pem. I've got that SSH key that we're going to be using to access this thing. So we're all set up. Let's click the launch instance button. Useful reading material here, right? This has to do a lot with Nvidia, how to use it, and just a little warning, right? Don't be mining on these things. GPU mining isn't going to make your money back, even with these powerful GPUs anymore. So agree to all the above. Read through these, of course. And look at that, we got a little instance launch notification here. Do not worry, right? if you see that it's booting, oh, I switched my region, by the way, just because I found one that was slightly closer to me. So you see the status says booting, right? That's just starting up, right? With its configuring for you. You can enter a name, right? Just so you don't forget. I'm going to call this Blender Tutorial. It takes a very short amount of time, considering the fact that there's some bare metal components involved here with the GPU. Considering they said vCPU, I'm assuming they do some kind of pass-through. Really doesn't take long at all. And in my experience, I don't believe that. Oh, look at that. Just happened right there. And look, it gave you the SSH command that you need for this. The username, it looks like, is going to be just Ubuntu. And I should have prefaced that these instances are Ubuntu 20.04, and we can actually verify that when we get in there, but I'm 90% sure that's still the case. Take note of your IP address, really take note of this SSH command. In fact, you can just left click on it, copy it to the clipboard, and then paste it here. Now, obviously, this isn't the wild, wild west, right? You're going to have to provide a key to actually get access to this thing. So we're going to say -I, and then the path to your key. I moved it right here. You might put a full path in, but that's all you're going to need. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes to this. This is going to come up actually what you're going to see. And this is something more to do with SSH than Lambda or anything like that. It's a very good practice as well. Key, mixkey.pem has bad permissions, right? We want to make sure that the key file cannot be modified by anybody else. So I'm going to do an ls-l on mixkey.pem, and we're going to take a look at this. It looks like it can be read by absolutely anybody. I mean, you don't have to know the rule of sevens, right? So the 3 sevens, right, for Linux with the way that it manages permissions. But you do have to know that this is other, this is group, and this is essentially the owner, right? So it's saying, oh no, people in my group and people who are just randos have some sense of permissions for this thing. So the quickest way to do that, just chmod 600 mixkey.pem, and essentially what this is saying is, hey, the exact same permissions for me. I want to be able to read this file, write this file. Anybody in my group, no dice. You're not me, you can't use it. Anybody else that has access to this file, this machine, nope, not going to happen. So we're going to do that, and we're going to go back to our SSH command, right, the same one Lambda gave us with -I and the key, and bam, we are in. This is the exciting part, right? I love this prompt, right, because it's so splashy. I don't know, I kind of like it. So we're in, we've got our server, right? As you can see, our username is Ubuntu, right? What's our host name? Okay, our host name is just set to our IP address. That's cool. But just to verify that we have everything that we're looking for, right? I'm going to run htop. You don't have to do this. I'm just showing you. And really, for barely over $1 an hour, I've got 30 vCPUs here and a boatload of RAM. This is excellent. Let's just do an lspci command now and make sure that we have all the right devices that we're looking for. And we're really looking for, right, where is it? There we go. 3D Control Nvidia Corporation, revision A1. That's looking like an A100 to me. I think we're happy. And we're definitely going to figure it out when we see just how fast it crunches this Blender. Unfortunately, right, if I do pwd, I see I have a little home directory. If I do ls, I notice, hey, I don't have anything on here, right? Which is kind of obvious, I guess. All I did was ask Lambda, hey, can you spin up a computer for me, essentially? So there's a couple things we're going to have to do. We're going to want to set up Blender, actually. We have to set up, this is just set up with the GPU. Lambda has done a lot of work with getting, I believe they made some kernel modifications maybe, but even if they haven't, they've done a lot of work with setting up the GPU to be ready to go for us. Other cloud instances, you either have to pay for an image that's preset, or you're in charge of installing those drivers yourself. If you use Linux in a desktop capacity, you know how troublesome that can be sometimes, or I guess how aware you have to be. But luckily this is set up for you, ready to go. So there's a couple things that you need to do to get Blender ready to go. Fortunately over here I've got a GitHub repo that's going to have all of that for you, including the steps to this tutorial. If you'd like to follow along or just run it yourself, you can follow these steps and probably get start to finish with you know, what you need here. I think it's going to work best for most people, and I'm going to include this command in the YouTube video description. Is you're just going to run a git clone for this script here. You're going to end up with this directory, so you're going to cd into this directory. And you've got 2 scripts here. They're both ready to go. The first one's going to be setup.sh. If you're curious what that does, it's very short, very simple. It's just going to update. It's going to grab a few required files that we need to run Blender. It's going to create this directory, which is kind of used just as a temp directory placeholder. And it's going to alias Blender to our snap install of Blender. I know some people that are really into, you know, open source politics and all are going to have their own opinion on snaps. I just think that's the easiest way to get the latest version installed on Ubuntu. If you want a different version, or if you don't want to use snaps, you're completely free to find a different way to do that. But I'm just going to do it this way just because it's the easiest right now. So I'm going to run setup.sh, and this goes incredibly fast, right? These servers are living data centers with a very quick internet. So even if my connection is not fast to this server, it's going to go incredibly fast setting up these things. All right, we're done. We should have this thing ready to go. If I run Blender, right, it's going to say, oh man, you don't have this, you don't have X11 running. That just means we don't have any kind of display running. There's nowhere for it to actually put the Blender program, right? As you can see, it's obviously a very visual thing, but we can render from the command line. I'm going to show you how to do that now. We are set. We're ready to go. If I do a which Blender, you'll see it's linked to the snap. I know some of you are just, really upset at me about that, but please just leave the hate in the comments. So the question is, how are we going to get our Blender file, right? That penguin2.blend to this machine, and that's where the scp command comes in. I'm going to split this up, right? Just so you know, this one down here, this is my local computer, and this guy up here is going to be my Lambda Cloud instance. Just so you know, I'm going to leave this htop up here, and you're just going to believe that I don't have a 200 gigabyte personal machine. That's how you're going to remember for now. So if I do an ls, we've got this penguin2.blend, and we want it over here. We want it to go over there. So scp, right, just like ssh, right, it's not the wild, wild west. We need to provide a key file. I'm going to do scp-i, and it's going to be mike's key.pem, right? And then the next argument is going to be the file that we want to actually upload. And then finally, we have to say where it's going to go, right? And the way that our computer knows where something is going to be that IP address. So let's go back over to our Lambda dashboard here. I'm going to copy this IP address. I'm going to say Ubuntu at, right? Not because it's the distro, but because that's the username, if you remember. So we're going to do Ubuntu at there. And then finally, we're going to do a colon, and we're going to put the path of that directory. And I'm just going to say ~/ right, which is basically just saying the home directory, please. I'm going to hit enter, and you'll see kind of a little upload bar here. There it goes. Nice, and we're looking good. So it looks like it went. Let's see if it really happened. If I do a cd .. right, go to my home directory here, ls, and I've got it. I've got penguin2.blend right where I need it here. So we're looking good. Now, you can do, if you're familiar with Blender from the command line, you can do whatever you want from here, right? You're home free. But I want to run a little helper script that just makes sure that you're using all the Nvidia GPUs. Because the one thing about Blender, right, it's a little tricky to tell it what compute instance or compute devices to use when you only have access to the command line, right? There's no GUI instance here. Move this penguin.blend into our Blender scripts. And I'm going to go right into that directory as well. I'm going to follow it into there. And now if I do ls, I see I've got the stuff from the Git repo that we had, right? That setup file we ran. I've got penguin2.blend. This is just kind of the text over here. And activate gpu.py. This is a Python script, which actually is going to use the installed version of Python that comes with Blender. And it's going to basically, well, let me just show you super fast. You don't have to understand code just to know what this is doing. It's extremely simple. Credits to whoever uploaded this onto Stack Overflow, and I had to make a few modifications to allow it to support single GPU instances, but all it does is just say, hey, do we have any OpenCL devices? Do we have any CUDA devices? If so, please use them. Set them ready to be used. And that could be a little tricky because, when you switch devices with Blender, you have to retell it, hey, use these compute devices. And since we're headless here, we really don't have a way to do that. So this script is going to do that for us. And the way to invoke a Python script as you run Blender is very, very simple. And I'm going to show you the command, and this is actually going to run the animation as well. So Blender, you're going to say -b -p, right? The -P is going to tell it, hey, invoke this Python script before you run. And then the path to the Blender file. So I'm going to say // right, because it's right here, penguin2.blend, and -a for the animation, all the frames. So if we run it like this, right, it takes a minute to get going, and then this text should be familiar to basically anybody here. I only have it doing 12 samples at a time, right, because I was still doing work, but you can see it's just ripping through this already. It's going to take a minute to load up first, right, as with any GPU render, but look, we're already on frame 2 right now, which for a cycles render at 1080p with a lot of hair particles, that's pretty intense. So we are just burning through this, and I will come back in just a minute and show you what to do with all the frames when we're done. And we are back. So if you looked at the time, if you follow the time that changed, that did not take very long at all. I barely had enough time to get myself a snack. I know it's only 2 seconds, right? But cycles render with particles, that takes some time. So where are all of these files? Well, by default, right, if you haven't changed anything, Blender should be tossing them to the temp directory. And since this is the temp directory, there's going to be some other goodies there. But look, here's all my PNGs, all my frames that I need. Now, I'd love to look at them, love to view them, but obviously we have a headless instance here that belongs to Lambda that I'm going to destroy when I'm done. And we've got my actual PC down here. So how am I going to download all of these? And that is just one final command, and then we are going to be done for the day. SCP is thankfully just as useful for downloading as it is for uploading. Alright, the command to download them, it looks very similar, right? Because it is it's using the same command that we used to upload them, but with some different options. So first, of course, we have to identify ourselves, right? We do not live in the Wild West here on the cloud. We're going to say -i mixkey.pem, right? We're going to say, hey, here's our key file. We're going to say where the destination is, right? Or not the destination, where the source is first. So we're going to say Ubuntu at 129. The IP address, right? This is going to be yours, right? Colon this time, right? Because we have to tell it, hey, where on this machine is it? So it's in /tmp, and we're going to say *png. Basically, hey, get me anything that ends in png from this tmp directory, which, as we see up here, is all of our frames. And then over here, we're going to do a space, which is basically saying, hey, the next argument I'm going to give you is where these files are going to go on my local machine. And that's going to be just a subshell for pwd, which is basically just saying, hey, right here if you don't mind. And it might take a minute, but look at that, there it goes. Perfect, there, we are all done. And now these have downloaded to our local machine. Let me do an ls and just prove it to you. I've got frames 0 through 55, and bam, there you go. Here's a file explorer on the local machine, right? It's in the same directory here. I'm ready to video edit it. I'm ready to do whatever I need with it. All right, 12 samples isn't perfect, but man, look at that guy. He's just cruising there. How are we going to clean up after a mess, right? I don't want to be charged for this more than I needed it. I'm going to click on this guy here, right, in my Lambda dashboard here, in the instances dashboard. And you see options, right, restart and terminate, right? We just want to do terminate. This is a warning telling you, hey, you do not have persistent storage, right? If you did anything super important and life-changing on this, it's going to be gone, right? Essentially those 512 gigs of SSD, that was only to borrow. And that's totally fine with me, right? We downloaded everything we needed off of it. So I'm going to say confirm erase data on instance, right? I'm going to click OK. And after a moment, you'll see I have no running instances. Now, you will notice for maybe a couple minutes as it spins down and stuff that you still have access to it. Don't worry, I've tested this out. They don't bill you for more time than you have actually asked for. The fact that this tutorial was pseudo real-time here, I'm amazed with the power of an A100, of course, but I'm more amazed with how simple it is to get a GPU instance and how affordable it was here. I really hope you enjoyed this. I haven't made a high-performance compute video in, gosh, some like 8-9 years or something like that. So if you enjoyed this, I'm happy to do some more of it. Please ask any questions you have in the comments. If not, then I really hope you enjoyed this video, and please enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.